What's up guys, I am in Dubai today. It is the 2nd of May, and if you've read the news, there's a bit of a situation with the weather in Dubai, but so far so good while I'm here. Anyway, we're here for something special. We've been flown out by Maserati to check out the Maserati GranTurismo. And we're supposed to be driving from Dubai to Abu Dhabi, but that will all depend on the weather condition, right? Anyway, we are here to see the car, even if we can't get to drive it. So let's carry on with it. So this is what I'm here for. It's the GranTurismo. We actually already have this in Malaysia. So the Modena and the Trofeo have been launched. The Modena cost 759,000 ringgit before taxes. It's now open for bookings. We also have the Trofeo right there. That cost 879,000 ringgit, also before taxes, also already open for bookings. So what's a bit special is what's in the middle right there, which is the Trofeo Prima Series. So that's a special edition. I think there's only 50 units of that. You know what? We've already done a video of the GranTurismo with the right-hand drive version in Malaysia. You can click the link somewhere in the screen for that. Woon will guide you through that version of the GranTurismo. These here are all left-hand drive. So I flew here 8 hours anyway. So you know what? Let's just explore a bit of the history of the GranTurismo first.
If we only consider this new modern GranTurismo, which is officially named the GranTurismo, its history only dates back to 2007 with the debut of the first generation GranTurismo. But that's not really where it began, as Maserati's GranTurismo or Grand Tourer spiritually began way back in 1947 with the debut of the A6 1500 at the Geneva Motor Show. It was the world's first GranTurismo car in history, and only 58 units were ever made. This was succeeded by the 3500 GT, which debuted in 1957. The same year, Malaysia gained its independence. The 3500 GT was Maserati's first true commercial success, with 1,600 units sold. This was succeeded by a long list of cars, with none of them bearing the official GranTurismo name, but essentially carrying the essence of what the GranTurismo should be. There was the 5000 GT, the Sebring, Mistral, Ghibli, Bora, and the Khamsin. Maserati also went through several different ownerships, even being owned by Citroën at one point. After the Khamsin, the GranTurismo just stopped for a while until Ferrari purchased 50% of Maserati in the late 90s, and that is when we saw the birth of the 3200 GT, which some of us may have driven in video games. Then, under the Fiat ownership, we welcomed the first generation of the officially named GranTurismo in 2007, and succeeding that is what we're here to check out in Dubai.
With that history lesson done, let's actually look at the car in the flesh itself. I mean, yes, we have seen the car in Malaysia, but you know what? Since the weather doesn't suggest we could be doing the drive anyway, let's just try to look at things that were not pointed out in the earlier video. So now, one of the interesting things on the outside of the GranTurismo is the bonnet, which the company refers to as the Kofango, yeah? So Kofango is actually a combination of the word Kofano and Parafango. So Kofano is for bonnet, Parafango is for fender, and I guess that is self-explanatory, as the bonnet and the fender are pretty much one piece, right? So look at that. Look at this big bonnet, goes all the way down here to these 3 vents. That's the Kofango right there. And if this is your first time looking at the all-new GranTurismo, you will notice that the most drastic difference from the previous version is that the headlights are now vertical. So the LED headlights, but now with this vertical design, I think that it looks a bit more elegant than the older one, but not quite as aggressive. Right, now let's move on to the tires. All right, so this is a Grand Tourer that Maserati says handles like a sports car. we have a staggered wheel setup. So at the front we have 20-inch wheels with 265 millimeter wide tires, and at the back it's a 21-inch wheel with 295 millimeter wide tires. So this is a same setup for both the Trofeo and the Modena. And since we're talking about tires and wheels anyway, brakes are 6-pot at the front, 4-pot at the back, and suspension is a double wishbone at the front and a multi-link at the back with air suspension as standard. Now, one key difference between the Modena and Trofeo, besides the higher power output from the engine, is that actually the Trofeo gets electronic limited slip differential as opposed to the Modena's mechanical LSD. I don't think it's that obvious if you look underneath, but I guess it would translate to a very different driving experience. So this blue one right here is the Trofeo. That white one right there is the Modena. So if you just look underneath, I think that the differential at the back just looks a bit different, just to tell you what's going on. So inside the Maserati GranTurismo, I would say that there are a lot of screens, given that this is an Italian car. So the three main screens that you can see are, one is the instrument cluster, the other is the head unit, and the other is the HVAC controls. And Maserati just told us that this center screen setup with the two screens gives you a combined size of 33 inches. I don't know why that matters. Anyway, besides these three main screens, there's also this analog clock and the rear view camera. So there are actually a total of 5 screens in the GranTurismo. Now, I don't know what your preference is, but I think that a bit more physical buttons would be nice. And I think that somebody has brought this up to Maserati, and the global head of design for Maserati had a bit of something to say about this. He said something along the lines of, if you wanted physical buttons for everything in the cabin of the car would end up looking like an old Boeing 747. Now, what do you think? Should the car have more buttons or more screens? As for the rest of the cabin, I think that this is a nice place to be in. I love the materials that are being used here. I do like the fit and finish of everything, and I think that the texture is generally nice. Now, looking at the car with its 2 doors, you might forget that this is actually a 4-seater, and Maserati even calls this a proper 4-seater. So let's see for ourselves how true that is. So to access the second row seats, you just have to do that. Seat will move by itself, and let's try to get in. I've actually adjusted the front seat to my driving position, and I'm pretty small at 165 centimeters only. Let's get in. Let's close the door. Let's pull this back and see, as the seat moves back, what is it like if you're as small as me at 165 centimeters only. I think that the legroom is still pretty tight actually, even if you were to call this a proper 4-seater. And look at this, my head is almost touching the glass right here. So if there's a speed bump, I think my head would bang on this. Anyway, there are some conveniences or luxuries, as you may like to call them, at the back right here. What do we have? We have a USB-A port, we have a USB-C port, we have 2 cup holders right there. There's a rear air vent as well, which looks like it is split into 2. Now, if this were our usual video, at this point right here, I'd already be in the car and telling you the performance figures of the engine, transmission and everything. But just look at the weather behind there. That drive is just not happening. So I have the hood pre-popped right here, and let's just open it up for a bit of a reveal. This is the Modena GranTurismo. So that is a 3-litre V6 twin turbo engine. And in the Modena, this makes 490 CV or metric horsepower and 600 Newton meters of torque. And with this engine, the car can go from 0 to 100 in 3.9 seconds and from 0 to 100 in 13 seconds. Top speed is 302 kilometers an hour. Now, since we can't drive the car, since the weather isn't allowing it, I will just rev it a bit for you and put the camera right behind the exhaust so you can hear the tune of the Nettuno engine. Now, fun fact, Nettuno is actually just Italian for Neptune, which is the Neptune god. But let's have a listen at that V6. Now, the sportier Trofeo has also a 3-litre V6 twin turbo engine, but it makes a bit more power at 550 CV or metric horsepower and 650 Newton meters of torque. And with that extra power and torque, this car does 0 to 100 in 3.5 seconds and 0 to 200 in 11.4 seconds. Top speed is also a bit higher at 320 kilometers an hour. And just like the Modena right there, we can't drive the car today. So as a treat, since we couldn't drive the car in Malaysia also anyway, I will just let you have a listen at the V6 engine.
The weather continued to not look good even after I was done perusing through the displayed GranTurismos, so we went for lunch, and thankfully after that, the sun started to shine brighter and there was a glimmer of hope to at least drive the cars.
So good news, looks like the weather has decided to be a bit nicer to us today. It's just a bit unfortunate that it's a bit later today also. So we'll still drive both the Trofeo and the Modena, but not with the intended route, which was supposed to be from Dubai to Abu Dhabi. So you know what, let's just roll with it. Let's just try it anyway. Let's see how it feels like. All right, so I am in the GranTurismo Trofeo first. This is the more powerful one, still a V6, but 550 CV and 650 Newton meters of torque. But this drive is only gonna be less than 10 minutes or so. So I can't tell you much, but we're here anyway. We flew 8 hours for this. Let's just drive this GranTurismo in Dubai. This is now in the GT mode, so it is comfortable setting, I guess. And we're driving on cobble roads right now. And you know what? If this is a Grand Tourer, then fair enough. This is perfect, right? Let's just maybe switch it up to Sport. Right? Sounds like this from the inside, although the microphone is attached to my body. And then up from the Modena, the Trofeo has an extra mode called Corsa. So this is the sportiest one. I believe that this opens up another exhaust tailpipe, or two at least. So it's a Valvetronic. Sounds a bit fiercer. Also on the inside, I think that difference is apparent. Just to be a bit more specific, in Dubai we're driving around the palms, and this is the one that, if you look at it from Google Maps, it looks like a palm tree, right? I think we have a similar thing going on in Malaysia at Awani, Sepang. But yeah, this is it. This is the palms. Beautiful place. Just a bit unfortunate that the good weather came in a bit too late. Now I'm just gonna be safe here. I am used to driving on the right side of the car and left side of the road. Not gonna do much. This is all I can share with you right now. If we're gonna do a full-on driving impression, of course, that initial road trip from Dubai to Abu Dhabi would have been perfect, but this is what we can do. We flew 8 hours for this. You know what, let's just enjoy it. let's just perhaps floor it a bit in Corsa. Yep, that's pretty much it. I'm just gonna keep it safe. Let's switch to the Modena. And we're swapping cars right now between the Trofeo and the Modena. And I'm being told by my friend right here, Nigel.
Hello.
From Ireland. Fun fact, I used to be in Northern Ireland for 3 years, so I kind of recognize his accent, right? And Nigel is telling me that Dubai is not always this clear, so the heavy rain has sort of cleared out and you get this very crisp view of Dubai, so that's nice. That's a nice experience. This is, after all, my first time in Dubai. I really like this. So now we're in the less powerful Modena. Still, it's a GranTurismo, so first time hopping in. It's a similar feeling, of course. I don't have the chance to floor it just yet. And you know what? Fun fact about the Maserati GranTurismo V6 twin turbo is that it is a bit like a Hemi, right? In that when you're driving economically, it actually shuts down one bank of that V6. So yeah, you basically have a 3-port car with that setup. Sounds a bit different too when you're at low speeds. But you know what? I am going to say a few things about the interior of the car. So like I've said in the video a bit earlier, I think that for an Italian car, there's quite a lot of screens in here. All right, there's 5 screens if you count the clock and the rear view camera. But this one, the Modena, doesn't look like it's a camera, right? So I think it's a bit unusual. I think that more physical buttons would be nice, but then hey, that's just my opinion. And this has also followed in the trend of the electronic gear selector, where now they're just buttons. So I think that it's just feels a bit unusual. For a car like this, you would think that they would like to retain the whole traditional feeling of it all. But hey, you know what? The Folgore is actually the most powerful and the fastest version of it. So maybe that's where all of this is heading. Anyway, a bit less power. There's no Corsa mode in this one. Right now this is in comfort. That's what you're hearing. This is GT and this is Sport. This also has a Valvetronic, but this is Sport. No Corsa here. Right, so that's the GranTurismo Modena for you. Again, it's a great opportunity to come out here to Dubai to drive a car of this caliber right here. You know what? Who really gets to do these sort of things? So this is nice, appreciate it. Weather is perfect and loving it.
With that super short drive in an urban setting, I couldn't give a fair impression of how the car feels. Sure, it sounds amazing, but if you're super serious about the car, I think you'd be expecting a bit more. So I did ask around some guys who have more experience with the car, better driving skills, and even have pushed the car to its limit. What I can gather is that the GranTurismo is very direct with its steering and that it has very good weight balance. It is predictable when you're going fast, and the tail isn't one to kick out as all wheels are driven. That being said, it is a Grand Tourer and not a track car. A perfect analogy for driving the GranTurismo would be like wearing a diver's watch. Sure, your watch can handle being submerged 1,000 feet underwater, but how many of us actually even go diving? Like a diver's watch, it's just nice to know that you can push the GranTurismo to the absolute edge and that it can handle it with ease. And as for the difference between the Trofeo and the Modena, I'm told that it is only when you push them to the absolute edge that you will feel a significant difference. Sure, the Corsa mode stiffens things up in the Trofeo, but they're still essentially built on the same chassis.
So the good news just keeps getting better today. So with the weather that is a lot sunnier now, we also have a surprise right here, which is this. It's the Maserati GranTurismo Folgore. This is an all-electric version of the GranTurismo. I think that this is very interesting because Maserati has not gone with the direction of a plug-in hybrid, but instead told the customers to choose, right, between a purely petrol GranTurismo or a purely electric GranTurismo right here. And now one look at it and it actually looks exactly like the normal petrol GranTurismo, but the bumper is a bit different, wheels a bit different. Instead of the Modena or Trofeo lettering on the Cofango, we get a lettering that says Folgore right there, and wheels special as well. It's still the same 20 and 21 inch staggered setup, 265 millimeters at the front, 295 millimeters at the back. Suspension is also similar, double wishbone and multi-link. Air suspension as well. Brakes are also 6-pot and 4-pot front and back. Now the most jarring physical difference of the Folgore compared to the petrol versions of the GranTurismo would be at the rear end. And that's because you don't get the quad exhaust at all. It does get this pretty cool looking diffuser, and of course there is a charging port which Maserati has decided to put at the left hand side right there. All else, you know what, this looks identical to the petrol GranTurismo. As for the inside, this is also identical to the normal GranTurismos, and this unit right here, which I'm told is a prototype, gets a blue and white color combination, which, if I'm being honest, this kind of reminds me of the BYD Atto 3 or the Cherry Omoda E5. I'm sorry about that, Maserati. So, everything is pretty much the same as the petrol GranTurismo. You get the same screen setup, but of course, this head unit right here gets some special EV functions, right? Like you can set your charging settings and all that, but all else, it is the same car.
The big difference for the Folgore here is under the hood. There's no frunk here, and the GranTurismo has a tri-motor setup, so there's one motor at the front and two at the back. They're all 300 kilowatts each, and if you add them up, that's 900 kilowatts or 1,200 metric horsepower in total. But due to the battery limitations, it can only give 560 kilowatts or 761 metric horsepower at maximum to the wheels at one time, which is still more than the Trofeo. And as for its torque, Maserati lists the Folgore's peak torque at a whopping 1,350 Newton meters. This is the most powerful and fastest version of the GranTurismo, and it does 0 to 100 in 2.7 seconds and 0 to 200 in 8.8 seconds. It has a similar suspension, tire and brake setup as the petrol version, and it can reach a top speed of 325 kilometers an hour. Mind you, this is a different animal than both the Porsche Taycan and the Audi e-tron GT, as this is much quicker, and the two-door GT body also means that it will handle a lot differently. Inside, it just reminds me of the BMW i5 and i7, and that's because the battery sits in the center tunnel, and that battery has a capacity of 92.5 kilowatt hours, which is massive. And with that, you can drive for 450 kilometers on a single charge. I'm not sure about you, but I think that's not quite a Grand Tourer's expected range. Hopefully, future battery technology will improve and make it a legit GT car. And to charge the battery, you can do it with 270 kilowatts DC charging, which takes 18 minutes to charge from 20% to 80%. The Folgore can also handle 22 kilowatts AC charging, which can restore 100 kilometers of range in 1 hour.
So that pretty much sums up our trip to Dubai to drive the GranTurismo. Like I've said, this car is already open for bookings in Malaysia. We're just here to drive it. It was a bit unfortunate that the weather conditions didn't really allow a full test drive session. But anyway, this was a nice experience. This is the Maserati GranTurismo Folgore. and this was the perfect, I guess, compensation to whatever happened over here. If you like this video, give it a like, share and subscribe. Also remember to turn on notifications. If you didn't, please let us know why. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.